Okay, I've gone a year and a half without doing a Q&A video, and I've got a bunch that we're building up over the past year, I'd say. So that's what we're going to do this week, tackle 20 questions asked by you, the viewers. That's coming up this week on Tabletop Witchcraft. Hey there, and welcome back to Tabletop Witchcraft. This week, we're going to do something a little different, and I'm going to do a Q&A and answer 20 questions that I picked out that were asked of me in the community tab on the YouTube channel. So I've got a whole bunch here. We might as well just jump right in, and I'm going to try and pronounce everybody's name correctly. If I get it wrong, please feel free to lambaste me in the comments below. I know I'm going to get somebody's name wrong, and I apologize. So the first question that I have here is from Pfeifenuber. And he asks, how do you find time to run a YouTube channel with family and kids? I'm lucky if I have 1 hour per week I can spend on crafting. Now, I'm going to try and answer most of these without reading off of everything that I've written down. But for this first one, I'm going to actually just read off of what I wrote, because if I don't, I probably won't make it through the question. So a lot of people have been wondering lately, if you've been following me on the channel a little bit in my Patreon. A lot of my patrons kind of have an idea of what I've been kind of going through, but let me just jump right in and do a little reading here and explain a little bit about what's been going on. So to answer your question, it's a grind. It really is. So I work about 40 hours a week on my day job, and I come home and I would hang out with my wife and my kids. I would take my kids to their sports, help them cook, clean, play with my kids, spend time with my wife, and after all that, and my kids went to bed, I would start, my crafting after everyone was sleeping. So I put in a total of about 70 hours a week on the channel and my day job, so it's quite a bit, but I really enjoy it. That being said, so I've been dealing with a pretty terrible event with my family that occurred about a month ago that I'm still trying to cope with and get my children through the best that I can, and it's not easy. So crafting has been hard lately in my life. It's really pretty much forever been changed because of what's been going on. So now, time to produce content really needs to be planned out a little bit better for me on the channel. And funding for the content has pretty much been greatly reduced, but that's okay. I'm not going anywhere. I'm pushing forward and with my channel, and I plan on continuing my journey with all those that want to follow along. And as we say in the Coven, which is my private Facebook page that you can join on Patreon, we're going to continue to grow this family of crafters and continue to support each other. And I know it's a little bit long-winded, but just to show the type of community that we've all created in the Coven and really on Patreon, because of this, a lot of people kind of had an idea that, I've been going through some hard times. And they got together and they actually made me this plaque, which was really cool. It's the Coven. It's got my little saying here that I talk about before we start every video, and it's got the names of everybody on here that's a member of the Coven. So I thought that was really cool and special. So thank you to everybody in the Coven that got together to help me through that and with this. I really appreciate it. So now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to some more questions that were asked in the community tab. Yeshua of Nazareth asks, do you make your own washes? Would you consider the dish soap and water method suitable, or does it completely lack in comparison to a well-made wash? I think everybody, when they first start out, you don't want to jump in and spend all kinds of money on things that you can create at home. And a lot of people like to make their own washes. I know I do. I also enjoy purchasing washes as well. They tend to save time, but there's more money involved. If you're going to make a homemade wash and you're basically adding just some dish soap, some water, and some paint, that can be used, on some terrain for sure. But yeah, I definitely do think that lacks in quality and richness compared to, if you buy a Vallejo wash, or if you make a wash that's got a little bit more ingredients in it, like some inks that can really add, again, some richness to that wash. So I would definitely recommend doing that. But again, experiment. I've got a little orange book that has every combination of paints, washes, any mixture I've ever made in that book. And over time, I'll tweak things and I'll make an adjustment, almost like my little field book that I have at work. So anytime I ever have to change something, it'll go into that book. And that way I can tweak things. So if I make a brown wash and it's just not brown enough, I can go back into it and I know exactly how many drops of brown ink I put in, and I can adjust it for the future. So I would definitely recommend to start a little book of yourself, like a little diary, and have one page for, paint mixtures, inks, washes, dyes, all that kind of stuff. That way you can just keep a record of what you've been doing. So, Yeshua of Nazareth also asked the second question, and we'll just go with this as well. How long have you been doing this hobby, and what kind of mistakes in the past have you corrected to get your current level of awesomeness? Thank you. So I've been crafting now for, I think I'm going to get into my age here a little bit later in the video, but for quite a while, about 30 years. And my love of tabletop gaming started from, I think a lot of people that follow me know, HeroQuest. And that started out when I was 11, 12 years old, when I got the game for Christmas. And I played that game a million times. And it's when I got to my millionth and one playthrough of that game, my buddies were getting bored of it, that I decided to start crafting and making my own little quests and my own little pieces for those. So I've been crafting for quite a while. Sometimes some of these things take a little bit of a back seat. When I went off to college, I wasn't playing this all the time. I really wish I was. So yeah, just, creating things throughout my life has always been something that I've enjoyed. I've actually made a 36-inch brick oven in my backyard. If you follow me on Instagram, you can creep me on there and check out my oven that I made. So yeah, just crafting has always been a big part of my life, and just creating things. What kind of mistakes have I made in the past? This was a good one. I remember I was working on one of my sewer tiles for my sewer video, and I didn't have the edge sealed properly. And yeah, I ended up setting the sewer tile down, poured the resin, and walked away from it to finish an episode of The Witcher. And when I came back, all of the resin was all over the buffet table in our dining room. So that was a big mistake. I learned from that. All right, next, what do we got here? Dan Carlisle asks, has a piece of terrain you made ever inspired an adventure you created, rather than the other way around? And by the way, thanks for all you do. Your videos have been vital to my nascent crafting hobby. Keep it up. Thanks, Dan. So a really cool little secret is that most of the crafts that you've seen on my channel, I'd say probably close to 90% of them, have all been for a campaign that I'm running. It's only been since COVID's been around that I really had an opportunity to craft some other genres and for some other games that I don't play, because my crew isn't around really to play as much as we like. I actually have a Necromunda 40K video coming out soon, so keep an eye out for that. But again, most of the stuff has been for a campaign I've been running, except for a few videos like the Healing Fountain. I've actually used it in my campaign, but that was more of like an homage to, again, HeroQuest, which got me started off on this crafting journey. All right, Derigo Algash asks, and by the way, that's a true main name right there. How much do you actually use in a D&D game the terrain like the Colosseum, or is it more about the build? And a silly off-topic question, do you mountain bike, and if so, is there any decent riding in your area? So I actually do use pretty much everything that I've created. Again, there's a few things that I've created for some genres coming up especially that I don't play. But for the most part, everything I use or I have planned to use. The big builds like the Coliseum, the Haunted House, those are big enough that I actually am planning like an entire game night just around those single pieces. And to answer your other question about the mountain biking, I've always wanted to get into it, never have, but the Quarry Road Recreational Area is an awesome place in central Maine that I know of that's got like 5 miles of single track that you can do, so check that out. Alright, so Sean Ward, he asks, do you play any video games? If so, which ones? Bench, squat, deadlift, PRs, how old are you, and any other hobbies or interests? Alright, so let's jump right into this one. Video games, love them, don't get a chance to play them anymore. All my buddies, they keep asking me to play every night, but they get it. I've traded my video game time for crafting here on the channel. I love video games. Some of my favorites are Battlefield 4, still love that one. Anything that's Elder Scrolls, can't pass those up. And I did want to try The Witcher, but I believe that came out right around the time that I launched the channel, and I knew that would not be a good idea if I started playing that, so it's been a while. But to my friends out there, there is a chance. They've been trying to get me to hop on their Discord channel and at least listen to them while they're playing, so maybe I'll start there. Bench, squat, deadlift. For those of you that don't know, health and fitness is a big thing with me and in my life. Something that I need, something that I have to do like every day. I don't PR too much, and I have some shoulder injuries that keep me from doing certain lifts, so I have to modify. But benching, I do it with dumbbells. I use 85s. I don't squat, again, because of my shoulders, with the bar on my shoulder. But leg pressing, I do 750, and deadlifts, I'm around 350. How old am I? Oh boy, I don't know if I've ever said this on camera before. I'm a lot older than I look, believe it or not. I'm 41 years old. And any other hobbies or interests? I am a very avid outdoorsman. I'm actually a registered Maine guide, and I like to do pretty much anything that involves being out in nature. Yeah, and like I said, health and fitness is a big one for me. So I'm in the gym quite a bit too. All right, let's see. Terry Crawford asks, what is your least favorite project you've crafted and why? Also, is there any hacks or shortcuts you've used on projects that have not been seen in your videos? Third and finally, what is your process in deciding what your next build will be? Is there any need for your builds in any game you're currently running? Or is it more of the hobby drive to create? All right, let's break this one down. So the first part, what's your least favorite craft and why? It's not that this craft is my least favorite, but it's the one that is the most noobish of the ones that I've done. And to no surprise, it's one of the first buildings I've ever done. It was a small like 2x3 shanty, and I really like it because it shows where I've come from in this craft. A lot of the techniques that I've done in that one, I can see, how much I've improved and what I would have done different. But yeah, it doesn't get too much use in gameplay anymore. Are there any hacks or shortcuts? Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a few that I'm showing from time to time whenever they come up. But one of the really cool ones that came out in last week's video was something that I just came up with magnets and a clay sculpting tool, which is really awesome and a big time saver. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to check out my trap video, which was the collaboration with DM Scotty. And finally, what's your process in deciding what my next build will be? So I'm an engineer, and everything I do has to be written out. I've got an Excel sheet and categorized of all the different builds that I want to do. And I'll look at my channel and I'll see, an idea of how many dioramas have I done, have I done a lot of fantasy or this or that, and I'll pull something from a category that I haven't done in a while, and that's pretty much how I pick what I'm going to do next. All right, let's see. Ron McCutcheon says, though I come to your channel more of a miniaturist than a gamer, I'm interested but only just started to put my toe in the water. It would be very interesting to hear you talk about how your terrain has worked in a game setting. Maybe things you've learned because they didn't work out in first playing, or players reacting and using the terrain in unexpected ways? Have you adjusted or come up with new builds in response to a game situation? So yeah, one of the builds that I did, again, it was one of the first builds that I ever created, and it was a small 3x3 building. And I thought it'd be really cool to add a nice little lantern to the outside of this building. And I did that, and I was all excited on game night. I put it out on the table, and everybody thought it was one of the coolest things that they saw. And here I am, all excited, because later on in this quest, there was a very dark area, a little dungeon they had to go into. And I didn't want them to have any light when they went in there. Well, I had tried my hand at OSL, and I had a little lantern on the building. And leave it to my brother, of all people, to decide he wants to take the lantern off the building. And at the time, I said, yeah, go for it. I let him take it, and it actually kind of ruined part of my plans for later on in that session. So that kind of got me. And another really big thing that I've been trying to get over, and I think I'm finally getting over this hump, is grids. I like to use a grid system when we play, and I think it's really important, obviously, for combat. But when you're telling a story or you're moving through a town, using a grid system, like for the sewer tiles that I made, you don't really need it. I'm trying to get away from using that grid whenever I think it's really not necessary. So that's just something I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around, because I've always been, again, that Hero Quest mentality. I like the grid system, but I'm trying to get kind of a good balance now here on the channel. All right, Katana asks, what is the best way to start a terrain collection? Where do you start after the basics? Basic dungeon tiles, pillars, trees, etc. All right, so what I like to tell people is, once you have the basics, once you have a good grasp on how to tackle those basics, I like somebody to take all of those techniques and roll them into one build. It could be a building, it could be a small diorama, but have a go at taking all of those different techniques and try and incorporate them into one thing and see if you can blend those together. It's a really good way of, checking your crafting level and overall just being happy with the craft when you're done, because when it's all said and done, we're doing this for the love of the craft, a way to escape from some daily life and routine and just have some fun. All right, QS asks, do you still feel nervous when recording or uploading some of your videos, or have you settled into the motion of things? So I've never really been nervous in front of the camera, because to me, I'm just talking to the camera. I don't have a million people in front of me. I'm not a big fan of public speaking, and it's funny because that's actually part of my job. I don't think that's really too uncommon. A lot of people have a fear of speaking in public, but that fear never really set in for me because I was always just talking to a camera. So yeah, that was really never that big of an issue for me. All right, let's see. What do we got going on here? Miss Malice says, do you have a favorite glue or tool, paint, or even a natural resource that people might not think about using? All right, I think everybody knows that I love my clay sculpting tools on the channel, but one of my favorite tools that I have has got to be my pencil that's got the green stuff on each end of it with some sand into it. That tool I use in almost every video. If you don't see me using it in a video, I probably used it off camera. I use it all the time. That is in my foam roller video. I talk about that a little bit. But basically, it's just some green stuff, and I have a kind of a round bulb, fat section on one end and more of a narrow end on the other side. While the green stuff is still green, I roll it in some sand, give it 24 hours, then I coat it in some super glue, and that sand really isn't coming off. And you can use that to texture foam, to rip and tear away at some rock features. It's really a handy tool to have. All right, so a question here from One With Mercy says, me and the kids play Frostgrave a lot, and I have been slowly but surely building terrain and painting minis. My question is, can you give any advice on the overwhelming feeling when you have so many things that need to be done, but don't know where to start and start to feel like giving up? I love crafting in minis, but it sometimes feels like I haven't accomplished anything. All right, I know exactly where you're coming from. When you've got a lot of things on your plate, your brain can kind of get scrambled a little bit. And I am a big fan of Post-it notes and writing things down. So whenever I got a lot going on, I literally will sit down and write down everything that's on my mind on a sheet of paper. And you'll be surprised at how quick your brain just can like relax for a minute. And once you've done that, pick out the build or whatever you're working on currently that you're thinking about most and tackle that. Set yourself some goals with some dates, write them down. You know, it might be like, okay, tonight I'm going to cut all the foam for this little, ravine that I'm working on. By the end of the week, I want to have all the features in place and Mod Podge the whole thing. And then the start of next week, or maybe that weekend, I'm going to pour the resin for it. Having dates written down and aiming for those goals is what's going to help you keep you on track, and it's going to make you feel a lot better about trying to accomplish them and get them done. So really writing everything down, for me, really helps out a lot. And just remember why you're doing this. I tell myself this all the time. I love crafting. It's a way for me to get away and forget about all the craziness of life for a little bit, because when I'm crafting, the only thing that I'm thinking about is crafting. So don't forget that. Enjoy what you're doing, and remember to just have fun, really. All right, what's our next question here? Okay, Pentium AP320 asks, how did you get into crafting RPG stuff, but also what was it, who, and why? Are there any close relatives that share the interest in crafting RPG stuff as well? So again, crafting for me started very young, back when I was about 10. Really started with Hero Quest, but that love kind of carried all the way up until now with the channel. I love a challenge, and really there isn't any genre that I wouldn't want to craft. It could be anything, really, you name it. I'm always open to any ideas or suggestions. So anybody that's listening still to the video, leave a comment down below for any video suggestions. I'll definitely take them all into consideration. But as far as relatives, the fantasy tree that you can see right here, I'll put a link to that video. That was actually done by my younger brother. It was his idea for a quest that he had, and it was a huge hit on the game table. So I had to go and make my own rendition of it. So he likes to craft a little bit, but I have to hand it to my brother. His imagination and his ability to DM and act things out is absolutely amazing. So I don't mind crafting whatever he needs, as long as I can be at the table while he's DMing. All right, Adam asks, who's on your collaboration bucket list? If you had to put together a 4-person team, you and 3 others, for a televised competition, tabletop gaming terrain and dioramas, who and why, and who would you want your celebrity host to be for that competition? All right, that's a really cool question. I'm going to combine it. So my bucket list of people I'd like to collaborate with, I'll give you 3, and that'll be the 3 people in the competition. All right. Number 1 would be Neil from Real Terrain Hobbies. I just am always amazed at the work that he does, his color combinations, his layering, his ideas. They're just so natural and so impressive. I would love to work with him and be on this game show with him as well. Another one would be Martina from the Nerd Forge. She's just like ridiculously talented when it comes to anything, not just crafting. I mean, we're talking about painting and making stuff for, cosplay. It's absolutely incredible, the stuff that she comes up with and they come up with on the channel. And finally, the third person, I have to say Luke from Geek Gaming. I kind of go way back with him here on the channel. He's been such a huge help for me on the technical side, the camera side, and there to answer questions that I have regarding anything scenics, right? If you haven't, check out his website, Geek Gaming, on Facebook and online. If you're picking up anything for any type of dioramas or anything like that, I would really love to work with him someday as well. Oh, and for my celebrity host, I gotta tell you, I would totally pick Arnold Schwarzenegger. That guy has been a huge impact to my family ever since I can remember as a little kid. I think my father owns every single Arnold Schwarzenegger movie ever made. I've probably seen them all at least 2 or 3 times. And I mean, come on, he was Conan the Barbarian, so we'll leave it at that. All right, next we got Zenith of Tempest asks, how often do you play D&D and get a chance to use the things you build? Not enough. I think I sort of touched on this earlier. One of the players in my group is a merchant marine, so sometimes he's on and off. He's here for 2 months, he's gone for 2 months. But when he's gone, I play with my brother. He runs a couple of one-shots, some single-player campaigns that we got going on, testing a few things out. So I get to play with him, and I actually have a way of playing with my group a lot more often, even when my buddy's gone. And I'm not going to say anything just yet because that might actually appear on the channel in the future. All right, so the next question I have here is from Nicholas Law, but I also have one from Tyler Fleming. I'm going to read them both and kind of combine the answer. Nicholas writes, where do you draw inspiration from for your builds? And Tyler says, assuming you're a fellow New Englander, I am, from your accent, do you like to draw inspiration from any architecture, landmarks, etc., from real-world locations? Your haunted house build would look right at home on the streets of any colonial town. All right, so I get a lot of inspiration from movies that I watch. One of the best movies you could watch if you're into like the grim dark fantasy setting would be The Brothers Grimm. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. It's pretty good. The every scene just has so many cool buildings and features in it that you could just spend an entire year building stuff out of that movie. Nature, historical sites, collaborations that I've done, and to be honest, just lying around in bed at night, thinking about a build idea that I have and focusing on one little detail of it, and that one little detail will spark like, oh, well, I should add this or I should do that until I finally fall asleep. So that's one way of falling asleep, but that's how I kind of come up with my builds. And as far as anything from like New England, Fort Knox here in Maine has a really cool location for, like a castle type setting is as close as we're going to get. Stuff like that. Going for walks in the fall out in the woods is a really cool way to get some inspiration for any type of nature builds. And of course, Stephen King here in Maine. Go and check his house out, or read any of his books, or watch any of the movies that were based on his books, are also some really cool inspiration. All right, Malt Barsland asks, how do you use your buildings in play in D&D? Do you plan encounters around them, or do you throw them in randomly? Quote, you come to an alchemy shop, throw in the alchemy shop. Do you think fog of war when playing, or let players see everything? Okay, so when I'm playing D&D, a lot of the buildings that I create, I plan on using, I use in-game. But this kind of goes back to the topic that I talked about earlier about kind of changing my philosophy a little bit when it comes to using a grid system. And, when you create a building that really, you're not going to have an encounter around or in, you're going to want to do that because you want to make the building, you want to have it on your shelf, and you want to impress some people with it on your table. Because a lot of the, theater of the mind comes into play when you're in a town, and to speed up game night, to, put an enchanter's shop, an alchemy shop, the merchant shop on the table, and have to set everything up, set all the little things up. I love doing that. It's helpful for my group because some of them like to see that stuff out on the table. It helps with their imagination. But it's not necessary unless there's actually going to be an encounter. But I build a lot of these things for the love of crafting. So that's just something to keep in mind. Everybody has their own thoughts and theories on what you shouldn't build, how you should build something. And I say that, you craft because you love to. So don't worry about what anybody else says you should or shouldn't be crafting or how you should craft something. Just do it because you want to do it. All right. Next, I got a question here from Trolix. Do you have a day job? How long have you been crafting off camera? So yeah, I do have a day job. I'm a civil engineer, and mostly what I'm doing is working on construction sites, construction management, and I do a lot with traffic signals and maintain the traffic signal system for the city that I live in and work in. And how long have I been crafting off camera? A long time, but I'm going to speak a little bit more specific to what everybody sees here on the channel. This type of stuff. I'm not going to go all the way back to the little things I made when I was a kid for Hero Quest. I'd say probably close to 3 years now. I've been really kind of diving in deep and trying to learn all I can when it comes to this awesome hobby of tabletop crafting. So this type of quality stuff, about 3 years. I'm coming back to another question by Derigo Allagash, and the question was, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? To answer your question, it's 24 miles an hour. Next question. And it's also going to be my final one, and I apologize. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the first name because I know I'm going to get it wrong, but it's to a Mr. or Mrs. Candido. So please correct me, and I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce your first name. What do you think about builds with servos? Is it too much? And again, I sort of touched on this not too long ago. If it's something that you want to create and add to a build, I say 100% go for it. Your buddies at the table are going to appreciate it. They're going to get a wow factor out of it. It might not have the replayability that, a very basic piece of terrain might have, but who cares? If you want to make it 100%, go for it, have fun with it, and watch your buddy's jaws drop when you put it on the table. So, that about wraps up all the questions here. If you made it to the end of the video, awesome. Thank you for sticking around and watching it. I've got again, Necromunda 40K build coming out here soon on the channel. It's right over there. I'm having a heck of a time building it. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, stick around for that. That should be coming out hopefully next week. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Pick up some merchandise, and please head on over to Patreon and join this wonderful family of crafters here that we're all creating and growing together. All right, until next time, I'll see you around.